Hello everyone, my name is Ritesh Gupta and you're watching the Pentester Guy. Today we'll be solving the lab for brute forcing authentication mechanism where our IP is getting blocked after certain incorrect attempts. So to solve this lab, we have been provided with the user credential Vinapeter and we have to find the password for the Carlos. The password list is already provided. We'll be utilizing this to brute force the password and to solve this lab uh, there are multiple solutions. So over the internet, you can find that using certain set of user credentials into the intruder using the pitchfork, you will be able to find the correct password. But the click is that happens for this specific lab only, as you have been provided with the list of password, and among these, one of the password is correct, right? But when it comes to the real life logic, you will not be provided with any password and the list will not be this small. So we'll be solving it with another technique. When we go with the hint, it says that for the advanced user, this lab can be solved using either a macro or a turbo intruder extension. Uh, However, for the turbo intruder extension, it is not possible because the logic is implemented for this lab is in a way. I already tried for turbo intruder extensions for handling at least 100 requests at a time, though we have only 100 passwords, but that is not fruitful. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going with the advanced approach of setting the macro for brute forcing the password using intruder. So this will help you to understand how to set macro as well as the actual issue when we face while we use the intruder. So let's log in into the lab. First, I'll use the account Wiener Peter to log in and capture the request, a valid request. Let's move to the repeater. This is the valid request, send it to repeater. So the observation is, I'll again send it to repeater. So the observation is if we send the correct credentials, we'll be getting 302 with new sessions. But if we send incorrect credentials, like for Carlos, we need to get the correct password, right? So if we send incorrect credentials two times in a row, and a third time it allows, but it will block our IP after the third attempt. That means only two incorrect attempts are allowed, and third one is the uh, threshold criteria after which will not be able to hit, or there will be a cooling period of 1 minute. So for Carlos Peter, this is the first attempt, this is the second attempt, this is the third attempt. We get the incorrect password. Now we reach the threshold of the incorrect attempt. Now if we go for the fourth attempt, it will say that too many incorrect login attempts and we have a cooling period of 1 minute now. So to bypass this or to solve this challenge, what we need to do is, as we can see, if we hit one incorrect attempt and if we somehow manage to send the correct credentials, in the backend the server will again reset the counter and will be able to again send a request with incorrect credentials, and our IP would not be blocked, and we'll be able to brute force the password list that we had. Okay, so if we send it now again, we got 302. If we send two incorrect requests, 1 2, again if we send it, we can again send two times. See, so this is what actually happening. But when it comes to setting macro, we'll be utilizing one request, and with each one request, the correct request or the correct credentials will be sent to the server to reset the counter. So also if we try to see, if we send it to intruder, right, and we set this as attack vector, we have the list of passwords, right? Just quickly copy some of them or all of them, I would say. We'll paste it, no URL encoding for our payloads, and this is the default resource pool which is sending 10 concurrent requests, but we need to send at least one concurrent request so that it can handle each request at a time instead of 10 requests. So if you set more than one concurrent request, no matter how you apply or how you configure the macro, or even into the intruder, if you have the list configured in a way that, I mean, two incorrect credentials for Carlos and one again for Wiener with the correct password, it will not going to help. The server will get overwhelmed request and it will handle it in that way. So we'll keep one request at a time, and if we try to grep match, that if we get incorrect password, let's see for how many requests we get this. So if we hit start attack, you see, so we have 100 passwords that we are trying to brute force. So out of 100 requests, only 3 were processed, in which we got incorrect password for 3 of them, right? But after the 3 incorrect attempts, the 4th one we got the cooling period of 1 minute. So we will solve this problem by setting the macro. So let's jump into that. So for setting the macro, we need to set the session for each request. For each request, this specific request must be triggered into the backend, and the session values and the parameter values can be updated. So to create the burp macro, we will go to settings. Then under the project section, we will have sessions, and here we'll be creating a session handling rule. So basically, you can control from where you need to update the cookies, uh, whether you want to update it via the repeater tab, intruder tab, or any extensions. So we'll be utilizing the intruder tab for brute forcing, and for demonstrating the logic, I'll be using a repeater tab as well. So we'll be utilizing repeater and intruder tab to update the cookie jar, right? So we have to enable this. As per your scenario or specific logic, you can update from where you need to update the cookie jar. The second thing is we have to set the macro, and if you create a session handling rule, you'll already get an option to create macros specifically for that rule. So what we'll do is we'll create a new session handling rule. I'll name it as brute force, right? And here we can set the rule action, that what has to be done if this specific session handling rule is into place. With respect to the scope, that where this specific session rule must be applied, you can select as per your scenario. Here it needs to be applied over the repeater and intruder, specifically over the intruder. So if you wanted to disable for other um, tools, then you can disable it. When it comes to the URL scope, if you are new to creating burp macro, always try to keep it as include all URLs. That would remove the overhead or any confusions. And now again we'll go back to the details, and now we are going to set the rule actions. We'll click on add. So we'll set as run a macro. Here we need to set a macro, that the option we received initially, right? We can add macro in the sense what is specific or what set of requests you need to hit automatically when a request is sent via repeater intruder. So we need to send the login request, right, that we had. We'll filter it. This was the login request with correct credentials vNepeater. So we'll select this and we'll click on OK. Now this specific request is added into the macro item. So when we click on test macro, what it'll do is it will send the request and we'll get the response with the new session ID, right? So this is the request that needs to be hit. We'll name it as winner request just to identify when we'll be analyzing the session handler. So this is the winner request. We'll click on OK. Now our macro is set. These are the options which says that whether we need to update all the parameters and headers except for some headers. So there is no exceptions. We are not updating it. Even if we disable here, it doesn't matter because our counter is updated at the server end and we do not need to have a new session ID to send the request again and again. We can send it by the old session ID. But in this case, we are enabling it just to be on the safe side. So the concurrent cookies will, the cookies will be updated into the cookie jar when this specific macro will be hit, right? Or the specific request would be hit. So now our macro is set, right? And we can click on OK. We can close this. Okay, so just a minute. Open cookie jar, empty cookie jar. So we have nothing into our cookie jar, right? We'll be analyzing this as well. We'll have a session tracer just to make you understand what actually is happening. So we'll open it. Let me split it. We'll have this request, repeater, and this is the request for Carlos and Peter, right? Okay. So we'll be utilizing the correct credentials first. Just make a note on this specific session ID and what gets updated here as well. So this is our request that we send, right? And we got a session ID ended with XXH. Now we'll be seeing this session tracer, what actually happens when we set a macro and how thing flows. So once we hit a request, since we enable it for repeater and intruder, it will work for repeater as well. So once we hit a request, the rule is getting applied that we set the macro for. The winner request macro, that means the request with the correct credentials is being hit. That is processing the macro item, right? And it's in the request. Once the macro request is being sent, we receive a response for the same. And now you see the correct, not the correct, now you see that the new session ID is ending with OUI. Here, the next step is the new session ID is added into the cookie jar and the cookie jar is updated, right? If we go back to the cookie jar, we'll analyze that the current request for this session ID OUI will get updated. So once we move back to the cookie jar, we see that the request or the updated cookie value is ending with XXH. The reason is once the cookie jar is updated, the request that we have sent, right, will get processed as well. So first our macro will be processed. Then the actual request that we have sent will be processed. So cookie jar is updated with the macro, with the session ID OUI. The next issued request that we issued from our end is having the session ID OUI And for that response, we got a new session ID ending with XSH, and that is what is getting updated into the cookie jar, which is the latest cookie value or the session value. Okay, so now we are clear with the picture that once any request into the repeater intruder is hit, a macro will run. The macro will be having a request, right, with the correct credentials, that is being Peter. So even if we hit a request with the wrong credential, in the first the macro first the macro will hit a request with correct credential. After that, our request with the incorrect credential will be hit. So to demonstrate that, we'll be utilizing the incorrect credentials for Carlos, that is the password Peter. Now, if you see, if I hit a send request, we got an incorrect password. Initially, we already had a macro request with the correct winner Peter password, which got updated, and later on, the winner. Oh, sorry. And for the second request, the issued request was Carlos Peter, the incorrect credential, right? So we hit it for the one time, we got incorrect password. We hit it for the second time, incorrect password. Third time, and now if we hit the fourth time and our macro is set properly, our IP must not get blocked and there must not be any cooling period. So we see the fifth request was also processed and it is saying that incorrect password. Because if we go to the fifth request, we can see before sending our request, we already sent a correct a request with the correct credentials, because of which the count would be reset into the backend at the server end, right? Now we'll be utilizing this macro feature to brute force it. Let me close the session tracer. We'll send the Carlos username into the intruder tab, and we'll select again this password where we need to brute force it. Already had this list right in the place. I'll just copy paste it. In the resource pool, we will be utilizing the custom resource pool with the concurrent connection should be 1, and we'll have the grep match to check for incorrect credentials, incorrect password. So once we see incorrect password in the response, it will be highlighted. So that's set. I think we are set. That's all. Now if we hit start attack, let's see how it behaves. So now you can see for each request we are getting incorrect password, and we are able to brute force the entire 100 passwords for the user Carlos. If it's a valid password, we'll be getting it here into the status code. Let's the brute force get finished. Okay, we'll sort the status code, and we can see that for the user Carlos, freedom is the correct password, for which we got 302. So we'll be utilizing this freedom to check whether we can log in or not using the password. Let me log out my account. The user is Carlos and the password is freedom. See, we have solved the lab. So in this case, we utilize the macros that we can set into the Burpsuite, and we need not to set up the username list and the password list in a row like two incorrect credentials and one correct credentials, then again two incorrect credentials and one correct credentials. The macro will take care of that. So that's all about this video. I'll be creating another video with some interesting topics.